The silence that followed Captain Jinho's announcement was the loudest quiet in galactic history. Across 12 worlds, in command centers and government halls, alien leaders stared at their screens in complete shock. The Shadow Maw horde was gone. Not defeated, not retreated, but completely erased from existence. A threat that had consumed entire civilizations had been destroyed by a single human ship in less than 20 minutes. On the bridge of the Defiance, the crew began their post-battle procedures with the same calm efficiency they had shown throughout the fight. The massive dreadnought slowly folded back into its disguised configuration, its 3-kilometer bulk compressing into the humble 200-meter frigate through dimensional technology that made physics professors weep. All weapons secured, reported Officer Subin.
Project Sunbreaker is powering down to standby mode.
Kinetic batteries are reloaded and ready. Energy projectors are cycling back to normal power levels. Chief Engineer Taeyang's voice came from the engine room with a note of satisfaction. Masking field reactivated, sir. We are back to standard frigate configuration. All advanced systems are hidden and running silent. Within minutes, the most powerful warship in the galaxy looked exactly like what the aliens had first seen. A small, ordinary patrol vessel that should not have been able to threaten anything larger than a pirate ship. Captain Jinho activated the ship's communication system one more time. All hands, this is the captain. Well done. Stand down from battle stations and return to normal duties. Chief Engineer, set course for our next patrol zone. The announcement was so casual, so perfectly ordinary, that several alien observers actually laughed out loud, not from humor but from the sheer impossibility of what they had just witnessed. On the Valari homeworld, the Crystal Ambassador stood before his viewing screen like a statue. His aide approached carefully, knowing that their species could shatter from extreme shock. Ambassador, the Council is requesting an immediate emergency session. All 12 species want answers. The Ambassador's crystalline form chimed softly, a sound his species made when experiencing profound confusion. Answers? What answers can we give? The humans just destroyed the Shadow Maw horde with a single ship. A ship they told us was small and weak. His aide's crystal skin flickered with nervous energy. Sir, intelligence reports are coming in from our observers. The human vessel, it was not what it appeared to be. Our sensors recorded impossible readings during the battle. Impossible how? The ship appeared to fold space around itself, sir. It compressed a dreadnought-sized vessel into frigate dimensions. The technology required for such a feat, we do not even have theories for how it could work. The Ambassador was quiet for a long moment. Then he made a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane, the Valari equivalent of hysterical laughter. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On the Dreknari homeworld, the High Command sat in stunned silence around their war table. Their scales had turned completely white, a color that meant their species was experiencing thoughts too large for their minds to process. The Etherian Council's energy forms flickered rapidly as they tried to communicate through their shock. Their normally musical voices came out as electronic static. The implications, one of them managed to say. If the humans have one ship like this, how many others do they possess? And if this was just a patrol vessel, added another, what do their actual warships look like? The questions hung in the energy-filled chambers like threats. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Hyun Ki sat in his office reviewing the after-action reports. The documents detailed the true scope of humanity's technological advancement: dimensional engineering, stellar weaponization, space-time manipulation. Technologies that could reshape the galaxy, all hidden aboard vessels that looked like simple patrol ships. Captain Sora stood at attention beside his desk, holding a datapad filled with communication requests. Sir, we have received formal inquiries from all 12 Council species. They want immediate meetings to discuss, and I quote, the full extent of human military capabilities. Admiral Hyun Ki's weathered face showed the slightest hint of amusement. All 12 species? Even the Thraxians? Especially the Thraxians, sir. Their message was emphatic. The Admiral leaned back in his chair, considering the requests. For years, humanity had been dismissed as weak and primitive. They had been given the most dangerous patrol routes, the worst assignments, the jobs no one else wanted, all while quietly developing technology that made their allies' most advanced systems look like stone tools. Schedule meetings with all of them, he decided, but not immediately. Let them wait a week. Let them think about what they saw. Yes, sir. There is one more thing. The Carillion delegate specifically asked about, and I quote again, "How many ships like the Defiance does humanity actually possess?" Admiral Hyun-Ki's smile grew slightly wider. "What did you tell them?" "I told them they would need to ask you directly, sir." "Good answer." "When they do ask, tell them the truth." Captain Sora raised an eyebrow. "The truth, sir?" "The truth. Tell them that the Defiance is one of our smaller patrol vessels. Tell them our actual warships are much larger." The captain's expression shifted from curiosity to amazement. "Sir, is that accurate?" "Completely accurate. The Defiance is rated as a light patrol frigate in our fleet classification system. We have over 200 ships of her class assigned to routine patrol duties." Captain Sora stared at him for a moment, then slowly smiled. "And our actual battle fleet is something I hope our allies never need to see in action." 1 week later, the Galactic Council reconvened in emergency session. This time, when Admiral Hyun-Ki entered the Great Hall, the atmosphere was completely different. No one laughed. No one made jokes. 12 species watched him with the careful attention usually reserved for dangerous predators. The Valari ambassador spoke first, its crystalline voice subdued and respectful. "Admiral Hyun-Ki, on behalf of the Galactic Council, we thank you for humanity's decisive action against the Shadow Maw threat." The words were chosen carefully, diplomatically. No one wanted to admit they had been wrong about human capabilities. Admiral Hyun-Ki took his position at the center podium with the same calm confidence he had always shown. The UNS Defiance performed her duties as assigned. The outer rim is secure. The Draknari delegate, its scales a nervous yellow-green, asked the question everyone wanted answered. "Admiral, if we may inquire, how many vessels of the Defiance's capabilities does humanity possess?" The hall fell completely silent. Every delegate leaned forward, waiting for the answer that would determine how they viewed humanity from this day forward. Admiral Hyun-Ki's response was delivered in the same calm tone he might use to discuss the weather. "The Defiance belongs to our light patrol fleet. We currently operate 237 vessels of her class on routine patrol duties throughout Council space." The silence stretched for nearly a minute. When the Etherian representative finally spoke, its energy form was flickering so rapidly it was hard to look at. "Light patrol fleet? Then your actual warships are considerably larger," Admiral Hyun-Ki confirmed. "Our battle fleet consists of vessels that make the Defiance look quite small by comparison." The Zenthari war chief, a being that had never shown fear in 3 centuries of life, actually took a step backward. How large?" Admiral Hyun-Ki considered the question seriously. "Our newest dreadnoughts are approximately 50 kilometers long. They carry enough firepower to sterilize solar systems. We have been building them for quite some time now." The Carillion delegate made a sound like a deflating balloon. "How many of these dreadnoughts do you possess?" "That information is classified for security reasons, but I can tell you that we take the defense of Council space very seriously." As the session continued, Admiral Hyun-Ki answered questions about human technology, human capabilities, and human intentions. He was honest about humanity's advanced development while revealing as little as possible about specific details. When the meeting finally ended, the alien delegates filed out in thoughtful silence. None of them were laughing anymore. The jokes about primitive human technology had died along with the Shadow Maw fleet. Admiral Hyun-Ki and Captain Sora were the last to leave the hall. As they walked toward the exit, Sora asked quietly, "Sir, do you think they learned their lesson?" The Admiral's weathered face showed a small, satisfied smile. "Oh, I think they learned several lessons, the most important being that when humans make a commitment, we keep it, no matter what it costs." Captain Sora nodded thoughtfully. "And the next time someone threatens Council space?" "The next time they will remember what happened to the Shadow Maw horde. They will remember that humanity keeps its word, and that we are very good at making problems disappear." As they left the Council chambers, Admiral Hyun-Ki's final words echoed in the empty hall. "The galaxy is a safer place when people understand that human restraint should not be mistaken for human weakness." Far out in the outer rim, the UNS Defiance continued its patrol, its true nature hidden once again behind masking fields and dimensional compression. To any observer, It looked like exactly what the aliens had originally thought, a small, ordinary patrol ship. What followed was not really a battle. It was a demonstration of power so complete that alien historians would later struggle to find words to describe it. The Defiance moved through space like a dancer, its massive bulk somehow graceful as it systematically destroyed the most feared enemy in galactic history. The remaining Shadowmaw ships tried to adapt. They spread out across a wider area, thinking distance would protect them. They concentrated their fire on single points, hoping to overwhelm the human ship's defenses. They even tried ramming attacks using their bioships as massive missiles. Nothing worked. Every energy beam that struck the Defiance simply vanished into its shields. Every biomissile was intercepted by defensive systems that moved faster than thought. Every ramming attempt ended with Shadowmaw ships bouncing off the human vessel's hull like insects hitting a window. Captain Jinho stood calmly on his bridge, watching the tactical display as enemy contacts disappeared one by one. Around him, his crew worked with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. They had trained for this moment for years, even though none of them had fully believed it would come. "Sir," Lieutenant Yujin reported from her sensor station, "enemy fleet is attempting a new formation. They are positioning their largest bioships in a sphere around us with smaller vessels filling the gaps." The young officer's voice remained steady despite the incredible sight on her screens. Over 800 Shadowmaw ships were arranging themselves in a perfect sphere around the Defiance, creating what should have been an inescapable trap. "How long until they complete the formation?" Captain Jinho asked. "Approximately 4 minutes, sir." Navigator Boram looked up from her station with a slight frown. "Captain, they are also moving ships to block all our escape routes. If we wanted to retreat, now would be the time." Boram had calculated 17 different ways to escape the enemy formation, but her expression suggested she knew none of them would be necessary. She had served long enough to recognize the look in her captain's eyes. "Retreat?" Captain Jinho smiled, and the expression was not reassuring. "Why would we retreat when we are winning?" "Weapons Officer Subin, how are our main batteries?" Officer Subin checked her displays with professional satisfaction. "All weapon systems operating at full capacity, sir. Project Sunbreaker has recharged and is ready for another firing sequence. Kinetic accelerators are locked onto multiple targets. Energy projectors are drawing maximum power from the dimensional generators." She paused, then added with a slight grin, "Sir, I could destroy their entire fleet 3 times over with our current ammunition load." The Shadowmaw completed their sphere formation, trapping the Defiance at the center of a globe of hostile bioships. From any direction the human vessel tried to move, it would face hundreds of enemies. The formation was perfect, inescapable, and completely useless. "All enemy vessels are in position," Tactical Officer Wansik announced. They appeared to be charging weapons for a coordinated assault. Wansik was a veteran of dozens of space battles, but he had never seen anything like this. Over 800 ships, each one larger than any human vessel except the Defiance itself, all preparing to fire at once. The combined assault would generate enough energy to sterilize a solar system. "Let them charge," Captain Jinho said calmly. "Chief Engineer, what is the status of our defensive grid?" From the engine room, Taeyang's voice came through with quiet confidence. "All shield generators operating at peak efficiency, sir. Dimensional barriers are stable. We could absorb their entire coordinated attack and still have power left over." The engineer had spent years working with technology that officially did not exist. The Defiance's defensive systems used principles that most alien scientists believed were impossible: folded space, contained singularities, and energy patterns that drew power from parallel dimensions. Lieutenant Commander Jae-hwan monitored the enemy fleet's energy buildup with growing amazement. "Sir, their combined firepower reading is extraordinary. They are preparing to hit us with enough force to crack a planet." "How extraordinary?" the captain asked. "Approximately 47 times the energy output of our own sun, sir, all focused on our position." Around the galaxy, alien observers watched in horror as the Shadowmaw fleet prepared its devastating assault. On the Valari homeworld, the Crystal Ambassador clutched his viewing controls with all 4 hands. "They are going to destroy everything," he whispered. "The energy release will be visible from 100 light-years away." The Draknari High Command watched from their war room, their scales cycling through every color of fear and amazement. Their military advisors had run the calculations. No ship could survive what was coming. No defense could stop it. The Etherian Council floated in their energy chambers, their forms flickering with anxiety. They had seen the human ship's incredible defenses, but this attack would test the limits of any technology. The Shadowmaw fired. 800 bioships unleashed their weapons at the same moment. Energy beams, biomissiles, gravity bombs, and weapons that had no names in any known language, all converged on the Defiance's position. The light was so bright it could be seen through closed eyelids on planets dozens of light years away. The attack continued for 30 seconds. 30 seconds of concentrated destruction that should have erased the Defiance and everything within 1,000,000 kilometers of it from existence. When the light faded, the human ship sat exactly where it had been, completely undamaged. Defensive grid absorbed 97% of the incoming energy, Chief Engineer Tae Yang reported casually. The remaining 3% was converted to ship's power and stored in our batteries. Captain Jin Ho nodded as if planet-killing attacks were just a minor inconvenience. Very good. Now let us show them how humans fight back. All weapons, fire at will. What happened next would be remembered as the most one-sided battle in galactic history. The Defiance opened fire with every weapon system it possessed, and the Shadowmaw fleet began to die. The ship's kinetic accelerators fired projectiles that punched through enemy vessels like paper. Each shot destroyed multiple targets as the projectiles continued through the enemy formation. The energy projectors fired beams that simply erased whatever they touched from reality. But the most devastating weapon was Project Sunbreaker. The contained stellar core fired again and again, each blast destroying dozens of bioships at once. The weapon could fire every 30 seconds, and each shot was like watching a small star explode. Officer Subin coordinated the destruction with calm efficiency. Target Cluster Alpha eliminated. Moving to Cluster Beta. Kinetic batteries are tracking multiple targets. Energy projectors are free-firing into enemy formation. The Shadowmaw tried to respond, but their weapons could not penetrate the Defiance's shields. They tried to ram the human ship, but their biovessels simply bounced off its hull. They tried to retreat, but Tactical Officer Wansik had deployed dimensional mines throughout the area. "Sir," Wansik reported with satisfaction, "enemy vessels attempting to flee are encountering our spatial distortion fields. Their biotechnology cannot adapt to the altered physics. They are dying just from trying to escape." The battle continued for exactly 17 minutes. When it ended, the entire Shadowmaw vanguard had been destroyed. 800 ships that had terrorized the galaxy for 1,000,000 years were reduced to scattered atoms in empty space. In the silence that followed, Captain Jin Ho opened a communication channel to the galaxy. His voice carried to every world, every ship, every station in Council space. "This is Captain Jin Ho of the UNS Defiance. The Shadowmaw threat has been eliminated. All enemy vessels have been destroyed. Kepler Station is secure." He paused, then added with perfect understatement, "We are returning to normal patrol duties." The first attack came without warning. 3 Shadowmaw scout ships, each the size of a city, fired their primary weapons at the lone human vessel. The energy beams were bright enough to be seen from nearby star systems. They carried enough power to crack a planet's crust and boil its oceans. The weapons hit the Defiance directly. Alien observers across the galaxy leaned forward in their chairs, expecting to see the human ship vaporized instantly. Instead, they saw something impossible. The energy beams simply vanished. The Defiance sat motionless in space, completely undamaged. Not even a scorch mark appeared on its hull. Around the ship, space itself seemed to shimmer like water, absorbing the devastating attack as if it were nothing more than a gentle breeze. On the Valori homeworld, the Crystal Ambassador stared at his viewing screen in shock. "That is impossible," he whispered, his voice like breaking glass. "Those weapons could destroy a battle station. How is that ship still intact?" Similar reactions echoed across 12 worlds. The Draknari High Command fell silent, their scales turning white with amazement. The Etherian Council's energy forms flickered wildly as they tried to process what they had just witnessed. Aboard the Defiance, Captain Jin Ho allowed himself a small smile. Around him, his bridge crew worked with calm efficiency, as if deflecting planet-killing weapons was just another day at the office. "Engineering report," the captain requested. "Chief Engineer." Tae Yang's voice came through the communication system from the engine room. "All systems operating within normal parameters, sir. Shield generators are barely registering the impact. We could take hits like that all day. The Shadow Maw scout ships fired again, this time all three attacking at once. The combined assault could have melted a moon, but the result was the same. The energy beam struck the Defiance and disappeared without effect. Captain Jin-Ho touched a control on his chair. Chief Engineer, I think it is time to show our guests what they are really fighting. Drop the masking field. In the engine room, Tae-Yang's hands moved over his controls with practiced ease. Masking field deactivated, sir. Revealing true configuration in 3, 2, 1. The space around the Defiance began to ripple and bend. Reality itself seemed to twist as advanced technology activated. The small frigate started to change, its hull section sliding apart to reveal massive internal compartments that should not have been able to fit inside such a small ship. Weapon systems emerged from hidden bays. Armor plating unfolded from dimensional storage. The ship stretched and expanded like a flower blooming in fast motion. What had appeared to be a 200-meter patrol vessel was actually a 3-kilometer dreadnought, its true size hidden by technology that folded space itself. The transformation took less than 30 seconds, but those 30 seconds changed everything. The humble human frigate revealed itself as the most advanced warship anyone had ever seen. Its hull was covered in weapons that had no names in any alien language. Its armor was made from materials that bent light around them. Its engines generated power levels that registered on sensors 3 star systems away. Across the galaxy, silence fell like a curtain. On 12 different worlds, alien leaders stared at their screens with their mouths open. The Zenthari war chiefs actually fell backwards in their chairs. The Carillion delegate began making high-pitched squeaking sounds. By the eternal matrix, breathed the Etherian representative, his energy form pulsing rapidly. It is beautiful and terrible. The Defiance's true weapon systems came online with a deep humming sound that seemed to make space itself vibrate. Kinetic accelerators capable of punching through stellar cores emerged from the ship's sides. Energy projectors that drew power directly from folded dimensions locked onto their targets. And at the ship's center, something activated that made even the human crew nervous. Project Sunbreaker is charging, reported Weapons Officer Subin, her voice carefully controlled. All crew should prepare for radiation exposure. The Shadow Maw fleet hesitated for the first time in their species' million-year history. Their bioships, evolved to be perfect predators, suddenly faced something they did not understand. Their sensors could not properly read the human vessel. Their targeting systems could not lock onto it. Their primitive brains, designed for endless hunger, now experienced a new emotion: fear. Captain Jin-Ho opened a communication channel to the enemy fleet. His voice carried across space with the weight of absolute authority. I told you no. Did you think I was bluffing? The lead Shadow Maw ship, a massive creature that looked like a cross between a whale and a spider, tried to respond. Its biomechanical voice crackled with confusion and growing alarm. This is not possible. Our sensors showed a small vessel, weak, primitive. This is what happens when you mistake human mercy for human weakness, Captain Jin-Ho replied calmly. We tried to warn you. We gave you a chance to leave. You chose to attack instead. Lieutenant Commander Jae Hwan coordinated the defensive systems as more Shadow Maw ships arrived and opened fire. Hundreds of energy beams and biomissiles struck the Defiance's shields, creating a light show visible from nearby planets. But the ship's defenses held easily, turning the assault into harmless radiation. Sir, Jae Hwan reported, enemy fleet is attempting to surround us. They are adapting their tactics and learning our defensive patterns. Let them learn, Captain Jin-Ho said with cold satisfaction. It will not help them. Weapons Officer Subin, show them what happens when humans get serious. Officer Subin had been waiting for this moment. Her fingers moved over her controls with deadly precision, charging main batteries. Target enemy command cluster. All weapons locked and ready. The Defiance's hull opened along its central axis like the petals of a deadly flower. Inside, something that defied all known physics became visible. It was a contained stellar core, artificially created and weaponized. The energy readings from this single weapon made alien sensors overload across 3 star systems. Tactical Officer Wan-Sik coordinated the targeting data with grim satisfaction. He had spent years studying Shadow Maw fleet formations looking for weaknesses. Now he had the weapon to exploit them. Target acquired, he announced. Enemy command ship and escort cluster in optimal firing position. Captain Jin Ho's voice was steady as stone. Fire! A beam of pure stellar fire lanced across space, striking the center of the Shadow Maw formation. Where it touched, matter simply ceased to exist. The enemy command ship, a bioconstruct the size of a small city, was reduced to its basic atoms in less than a second. The beam continued through the enemy formation, erasing everything in its path. 100 bioships, each one capable of destroying planets, were reduced to empty space and scattered particles. The weapon fired for exactly 3 seconds, and when it stopped, a significant portion of the Shadow Maw fleet had simply vanished. The remaining enemy ships recoiled in horror. Their biomechanical screams filled every communication frequency, sounds of pain and terror that hurt to hear. For the first time in their species' existence, the Shadow Maw fleet broke formation and began to retreat. But Captain Jin Ho was not finished. Tactical Officer Wonsik, prepare the dimensional mines. Let us make sure they remember this lesson for the rest of their very short lives. Wonsik's smile was not pleasant. Dimensional mines armed and ready, sir, targeting all escape routes. Space itself began to fold and twist around the fleeing Shadow Maw ships. The mines were not physical objects, but distortions in reality. Areas where the laws of physics worked differently. The bioships found their escape routes cutting through zones where their living technology could not function, where their flesh began to die and their mechanical parts ceased to work, one by one. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever known was being systematically destroyed by a single human vessel that should not have been able to exist. The last thing the Shadow Maw heard before their fleet was wiped out was Captain Jin Ho's calm voice on the communication channels. Next time, when a human tells you no, perhaps you should listen. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with noise. 12 different alien species sat around the massive circular table, their voices mixing together in a chaos of sounds. Some clicked, some hummed, and others made noises that hurt human ears to hear. Admiral Hyun Ki stood at the center of it all. His gray uniform was simple compared to the fancy robes and armor worn by the other delegates. His weathered face showed no emotion as he waited for the noise to die down. Behind him, Captain Sora stood perfectly still, her hands clasped behind her back. The Valari ambassador rose first. It looked like a walking crystal sculpture, tall and thin with 4 arms that caught the light. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. So the humans think they can defend the outer rim with one ship? The crystal being's laugh was like breaking glass. How amusing. More laughter filled the hall. The Draknari delegate, a large lizard-like creature with scales that changed color, hissed with amusement. Its scales turned bright yellow, which everyone knew meant it found something very funny. Perhaps they planned to throw rocks at the enemy, the Draknari said, its forked tongue flicking out. Or maybe they will ask the Shadow Maw horde very nicely to go away. Even the normally polite Etherian representative seemed amused. The being of pure energy floated in its clear container, its form flickering brighter than usual. When it spoke, its voice came from speakers built into its transport unit. The humans have always been brave, the Etherian said in its musical voice. But bravery alone cannot stop 1,000 ships. This is not courage. This is madness. The Carillion delegate, a squid-like creature floating in a tank of blue liquid, waved its tentacles in agreement. The humans always think they can solve everything with fighting. But what good is one small ship against the Shadow Maw horde? Admiral Hyun Ki listened to it all without changing expression. He had heard these comments before. For years, the other species had looked down on humanity. They saw humans as young and weak, good only for grunt work and cannon fodder. The Zenthari ambassador, a tall bird-like creature with golden feathers, spread its wings wide. Perhaps we should send our own fleets to do the real work. The humans can watch and learn how real space combat is done. This brought another round of laughter from the assembled delegates. Captain Sora felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her face blank. Years of military training had taught her to control her emotions, even when listening to insults. The Nexari delegate, a being that looked like flowing metal in roughly human shape, made a sound like grinding gears. This was how its species laughed. I have seen human ships. They are so primitive. No advanced shielding, no quantum weapons, no dimensional drives. How do they even travel between stars? Very slowly, I imagine, said the Valari ambassador, causing another wave of amusement. The Thraxian representative, a massive, bear-like creature covered in thick fur, growled softly. Unlike the others, it did not seem amused. The Shadow Maw horde has destroyed entire civilizations. They eat planets. They turn living beings into part of their fleet. This is not a joke, but even the serious Thraxian's words were ignored. The other delegates were too busy enjoying themselves at humanity's expense. The Kalari delegate, a slug-like being that left a trail of slime wherever it went, spoke in a wet, bubbling voice. Maybe the humans have a secret weapon. Like very loud music? I hear human music is quite terrible. This brought the loudest laughter yet. Several delegates made their species' version of applause. The crystalline Valari chimed like bells, while the Draknari scales flashed in rapid rainbow patterns. Admiral Hyun Ki finally raised his hand for silence. The laughter slowly died down, though several delegates still made amused sounds. The UNS Defiance will hold the line at Kepler Station, he said in a calm, clear voice. That is our commitment to this alliance. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds before the laughter started again, louder than before. Defiance. The Valari ambassador exclaimed. At least they named it well. It will be defiant right up until it gets destroyed. How long do you think it will last? Asked the Carillion, its tentacles wiggling with glee. I say 5 minutes once the Shadow Maw arrive. Too generous, replied the Zenthari, preening its golden feathers. 2 minutes at most. These bioships are the size of small moons. The human vessel will not even register as a threat. The Nexari made its grinding laugh again. Perhaps they plan to ram the enemy flagship? A very human solution, simple and direct and completely useless. Captain Sora watched the faces around the table. She had served with Admiral Hyun Ki for 10 years. She knew that look in his eyes. It was the same look he got right before he surprised everyone with a brilliant tactical move. The Etherean's energy form pulsed thoughtfully. I do not understand human thinking. They must know this is suicide. Why do they insist on this path? Pride, said the Draknari, its scales turning dark red with contempt. Humans have too much pride and not enough sense. They would rather die than admit they are weak. The Kalari left a particularly large slime trail as it shifted in excitement. Maybe we should take bets on how quickly the human ship gets destroyed. I could use some extra credits. More laughter filled the hall. The delegates began making actual wagers on how long the human ship would survive. The estimates ranged from 30 seconds to 10 minutes. No one bet on the humans actually winning. Admiral Hyun Ki listened to it all with the patience of someone who had dealt with fools before. When the laughter finally died down, he spoke again. Is there any other business for this council session? The Valari ambassador waved one of its crystal arms dismissively. I think we have wasted enough time on human fantasies. Let us discuss real defense plans for when their little ship gets turned into space dust. The session continued for another hour, but the delegates had lost interest in the humans. They talked about their own fleets, their own strategies, their own plans for dealing with the Shadow Maw horde. The humans were dismissed as irrelevant. As the meeting ended, the delegates filed out of the hall, already composing messages to their homeworlds. They would tell their leaders about the human joke, about the single ship being sent to fight an impossible battle. Captain Sora waited until they were alone before speaking. Admiral, they have no idea what they just saw, do they? Admiral Hyun Ki's weathered face finally showed a small smile. No, Sora, they have no idea at all. And that is exactly how we want it. The two humans left the council chamber, their footsteps echoing in the empty hall. Behind them, the great table sat silent, soon to be the site of a very different kind of meeting. 3 weeks passed like a bad dream. Every species in the galaxy watched their long-range sensors with growing fear. The Shadow Maw horde was coming, and nothing could stop them. The enemy fleet looked like a disease spreading across the star maps. Dark bioships moved through space like hungry animals, leaving dead solar systems behind them. Where they passed, planets became empty rocks floating in the void. Captain Jinho stood on the bridge of the UNS Defiance, watching the tactical display with calm eyes. His ship drifted alone in the empty space between Kepler Station and the approaching darkness. Around him, stars twinkled peacefully as if they did not know what was coming. The Defiance looked small and ordinary. It was about 200 meters long, with a simple gray hull and basic weapon mounts. To anyone watching, it appeared to be exactly what the aliens thought it was, a weak human patrol ship sent to die. Sir, Lieutenant Yujin called from her station. Long-range sensors show approximately 1,200 hostile contacts. They will reach our position in 6 hours. Yujin was young, barely 25, but her voice stayed steady as she reported the impossible numbers. 1,200 ships, each one the size of a small moon, each one capable of destroying entire fleets. Navigator Boram worked at her controls with practiced movements. Her fingers danced over the navigation console as she calculated escape routes. All retreat paths mapped and ready, Captain. We can jump to faster than light speed in 30 seconds if you give the order. Boram had served on merchant ships before joining the military. She knew space like other people knew their own homes. If anyone could get them out of this mess, it would be her. But Captain Jin Ho made no move toward the escape option. Instead, he activated the ship-wide communication system. His voice carried to every corner of the Defiance, reaching all 93 crew members. All hands, this is the captain speaking. In 6 hours we make our stand. Not for glory, not for medals, not for recognition. We stand here because someone has to. Because when the darkness comes, someone must hold the light. That is what humans do. That is who we are. The speech was simple, but it carried weight. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Tae Yang nodded as he listened. He had served with Captain Jin Ho for 8 years. He trusted this man completely, even when the situation seemed hopeless. Tae Yang's engine room was strange. The reactor that powered the ship was enormous, taking up far more space than it should on a vessel this size. The engineering deck felt bigger on the inside than the ship's exterior suggested was possible. But Tae Yang never questioned it. Military ships had classified technology all the time. As the hours passed, emergency broadcasts flooded Council space. Every government, every military, every news service in the galaxy was focused on the same thing. The Shadowmaw horde was coming, and only one ship stood in their way. On the Valari homeworld, the Crystal Ambassador watched his viewing screen with growing unease. The human ship was just a tiny dot on the display, impossibly small compared to the approaching darkness. "This is madness," he said to his aide. "A younger Valari with bright blue crystal skin. They will be destroyed in seconds. Why do they not retreat?" The aide's crystalline form shimmered with confusion. Perhaps they hoped to buy time for the real fleets to arrive. But both knew the truth. The nearest Council fleet was 3 days away. The Shadowmaw would reach the core worlds long before any help could arrive. On 12 different worlds, alien leaders watched the same impossible scene. The Draknari High Command gathered around their war table, their scales dark with worry. The Etherian Council floated in their energy chambers, their forms flickering with anxiety. Even the proud Zenthari war chiefs stopped their posturing and watched in silence. The Shadowmaw Vanguard entered sensor range with 4 hours to go. Even from a distance, the bioships were terrifying to look at. They were not built, they were grown. Dark metal mixed with pulsing flesh, creating vessels that were part machine and part living nightmare. Each ship was unique, shaped by the needs of the moment. Some looked like giant insects with weapon pods for eyes. Others resembled massive fish with missile tubes instead of fins. All of them radiated hunger, the endless need to consume and grow. "They are trying to communicate with us," reported Communications Officer Yoonji. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly as she worked her controls. Yoonji was the youngest officer on the bridge at only 22. She had joined the space service to see the galaxy, not to face down the worst threat in known history. But she did her job with the same calm professionalism as the veterans around her. "Put them through," Captain Jin Ho ordered. The bridge filled with a sound that made everyone wince. It was like screaming metal mixed with dying stars, a noise that hurt to hear. When the Shadowmaw spoke, they used perfect galactic standard, somehow making the universal language sound like a curse. "Small vessel, you block our path to the feeding grounds. Move aside or be consumed and added to our fleet." The threat was delivered in a flat, emotionless tone that made it even more frightening. The Shadowmaw did not get angry or excited. They simply stated facts. They would consume the human ship, turn its crew into part of their biomechanical collective, and add its materials to their fleet. Captain Jin Ho's response was simple and clear. "No." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Around the galaxy, billions of beings held their breath. The human captain had just refused the most terrifying force in known space. He had said no to an enemy that had never been defeated. Tactical Officer Wansik updated his displays as more enemy ships appeared on sensors. The man was 40 years old and had fought in every major human conflict of the last 2 decades. He had seen impossible odds before, but nothing like this. "Sir, they are deploying an attack formation. I count. He paused, double-checking his numbers. "I count over 1,000 ships in the vanguard alone. The main fleet is still coming." Science Officer Jae-hwan monitored the energy readings from the approaching fleet. Each ship generated power levels that could light up entire star systems. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could stop any known attack. "Captain," Jae-hwan said quietly, "their combined firepower is significant. Very significant." It was the understatement of the century. The approaching fleet had enough weapons to sterilize every inhabited world in the galaxy twice over. And all of it was focused on one small human ship. The Shadow Maw fleet began to spread out, surrounding the Defiance from all sides. They moved with the patience of predators who knew their prey could not escape. There was no hurry, no excitement, just the slow, inevitable advance of unstoppable force. Captain Jin-ho watched them come with the same calm expression he had worn throughout the crisis. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations with steady hands and clear minds. They were afraid. Only fools would not be afraid. But they were ready. In the final hour before contact, Captain Jin-ho made one last announcement to his crew. "In 60 minutes, they will attack. They expect us to run or surrender. They expect us to be weak. They have no idea what humans are really capable of when we stop holding back. Today, we show them what they should have been afraid of all along." The captain closed the channel and turned to his bridge crew. "All stations report ready, sir," said First Officer Subin. "Very good," Captain Jin-ho replied. "Then let us begin."